I hope that you guys are doing amazing wherever you are in the world. My name is Boom Shikha, and I wanted to welcome you to my channel, to all my INFJ videos. I hope that you guys enjoy them, but more particularly, I hope that you guys learn from them and you are able to gain wisdom from it and become the best version of yourself as much as possible. In this video, I wanted to speak to you guys about shadow work and how it's really, really important that as INFJs and as human beings in general, we do our shadow work. One of the really good books on it that's out there is called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And mainly what she says in that, and what I want to convey to you guys, is that as long as we don't deal with our shadows, those slimy parts of us, those things that we hate about ourselves, those things that make us feel icky, those things that trigger us, the more we don't deal with them, the bigger they will get, right? So they're basically like monsters inside the closet or under the bed, right? When you were a child, the more you believe that there were monsters inside the closet or monsters under the bed or in the dark, the more scared you got, the bigger they became in your head, the bigger and scarier they became in your head, and the more afraid you were, right? But as soon as your parent came in or someone that you loved and showed you the closet and opened the door and said, oh, there's nothing inside, or he showed you under the bed and you're like, oh, whoa, there's nothing inside, right? The minute that happened, you were like, oh, okay, cool, and the monster disappeared. Or if there was a monster underneath, it was as tiny as a baby, like a tiny one, and it was not scary at all, right? And so that's what we need to do with our shadows. We need to do this work, looking at them face to face and dealing with them as soon as they rise up. Because the more we ignore our shadows, the more we ignore those parts of us, the bigger that they become and the scarier they become. And the scarier they become, the less we want to deal with them, right? And that's the reason, same thing with bad habits. You need to deal with bad habits as soon as they happen. So if you get up in the morning and you start checking your Facebook right away and you're like, well, I've only done that once or twice, that's okay, cool. But what happens is that the habits, they're like a little trickle of water in the beginning, right? The more you start doing them, the more you do them, the more you kind of work with them, the bigger they become. And they become a raging river of water eventually where you can't even stop them anymore. So you have to stop bad habits as soon as they happen, and you have to deal with shadows as soon as they emerge. Now, of course, a lot of us will not do that because it's scary to deal with shadows, right? I'll give you a quick example from my own life. One of my main triggers with my parents, I don't have a lot of triggers with my parents because I've kind of been dealing with a lot of it. But one of the main triggers that always gets me down, that always gets me crying, that always gets me upset and emotional is when they call me a terrible daughter. Now, logically, I know that I'm not the best daughter, and like I've chosen not to be a very good daughter so I can do my work and so I can live my life and be happy and be away from their madness, right? So I've chosen to live this life, and I understand that. I understand that this is what I've chosen to do, and it's all right if I'm not the best daughter ever because at least I get to be happy and alive and do and live my life to the best of my ability because of this, right? But whenever they say that to me, and they know that it's a trigger point for me, so they poke and prod at me by saying this, whenever they say this to me, I always feel terrible. As soon as they say it, I start crying. As soon as they say it, I start raving and ranting and crying and being angry and yelling and throwing a temper tantrum because it's a trigger point for me. And why is it a trigger point? Because it's a shadow for me, right? It's a shadow because I haven't dealt with it properly. And so recently I decided, okay, I'm just going to deal with this finally and for all. I'm sick of thinking about it. I'm sick of talking about it. And I realized what my shadow was that I believed I wanted to be a good daughter is what my shadow was. I really, really wanted to be a good daughter because if I was a good daughter, then I didn't have to feel guilty about living my life the way I wanted to live. So I wanted the best of both worlds. I wanted to live my life as I wanted to and still be a good daughter, right? Which is kind of not possible. If I want to live my life the way I want to live it, I'm not going to be able to be a good daughter for them because for them, being a good daughter is synonymous with living the life that they want me to live, right? So as soon as I realized that fact, as soon as I kind of made that connection in my head, I realized that as soon as they will say, if they ever say that you're not a good daughter, I'll agree with them. I'll be like, yeah, I'm not a good daughter. I'm not a good sister. I'm not a good friend. I'm not good anything because I've chosen not to be like that. Because if I am a good daughter, a good friend, a good sister, that means that I can't live my life on my own terms, that I have to go back to Toronto, I have to live there, I have to do all the different things that you want me to do And I don't want to do that. I can't do that. I refuse to do that. And so in order to be a good daughter, I have to be a bad boom. I have to not be myself. And I don't want to do that. I'd rather be myself and be a bad daughter, right? And so as soon as I am fine, as soon as I became fine with being a bad daughter, because until that point I was like, no, I'm a good daughter. I do my level best, blah, blah, blah. The reality is, no, you're not a good daughter, and that should be fine. You should be all right with it. You should be all right with it because that is how it is. You know, as soon as I became all right with it, all of a sudden it's not a trigger point for me anymore. Now, maybe it's still partly there because big shadows like that take a lot of work to untangle. They take a lot of effort to remove from yourself, right? So maybe there's a part of it that's still inside of me and I'll have to deal with over and over again as time goes on. But that's okay. That's okay because that's life. You know, that's how shadows work. We deal with a little bit of it and then they come up again. And we deal with a little bit more of it and then they come up again. And then we deal a little bit more with it and then come up again. And eventually we remove it completely. The reason I bring up shadow work, the reason I really want you guys to start working on your own shadows is because that is how we grow as a human being. It's really important for us to start doing our shadow work as soon as possible. Especially if you're a younger INFJ, you probably don't have a lot of shadows built up inside of you already because you're still new, you still are, dealing with a lot of new things, so you're still fresh, like a baby. When a baby comes into the world, they don't have any shadows, they don't have any ingrained habits, they don't have any behaviors that ruin their lives, all that stuff. So if you're younger, I recommend that you start this process right away. So as soon as you get triggered by anyone, you know that's a shadow for you. As soon as you get angry about something, you know that's a shadow for you. I get really angry with people who are miserly, who don't tip well, and things like that, because I have issues or I have shadows related to money. I have issues with that, and so I'm kind of dealing with it on my own. But I know that whenever I get angry with someone over that, it's because I am dealing with my own shadow, and I need to deal with that shadow in my own way, privately, the way I do it. Right? You can't deal with your shadows by talking to other people about it. You can't deal with your shadows by going to a therapist and talking to them about it because they won't get it. It's just not possible. A lot of the work that you need to do with shadows has to be done internally. It has to be done within yourself because no one else is going to really understand. You can talk about it with someone else, but they're not going to be able to help you as much as you can do for yourself. You have to do all this work within yourself, by yourself, internally, right? So I really hope that this makes sense to you guys. I hope that I've been able to explain myself to you. I'm going to do more videos on shadows and things like that in the future, but I wanted to kind of introduce the topic so we can start talking about it and you can start thinking about it, right? Think about your own triggers. Think about things that trigger you, that make you angry, that make you upset, that make you cry, and think about why that happens. Think about what is it internally, what is inside of you that's causing that behavior to come up, right? And if you guys have any questions at all, please message me anytime. I'm open to all questions, suggestions, feedback, anything like that. And you guys have all my contact information below. And I should see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.